Ladies and gentlemen, there comes a moment when someone finally understands why a person chooses not to welcome too many visitors at home. It's not because of arrogance, not because of dislike, and certainly not because of isolation. It is because home is sacred. Home is more than just walls and furniture. It is the one place where the soul finds its refuge. For some, visitors bring life, chatter, and joy. But for others, the constant flow of people can drain peace and disturb balance. The home is their healing space, a private corner where silence speaks louder than words. Every knock at the door feels like a ripple across calm water, breaking the stillness they guard so carefully. Many misunderstand this choice. They think it means rejection, when in truth it is self-preservation. A home without constant visitors is not an empty home. It is a protected space. It is where thoughts are nurtured, emotions are balanced, and inner strength is restored. And one day, when someone realizes this truth, they finally see the reason behind the quietness. They see why the doors remain closed more often than open. They see that it's not about pushing people away, but about keeping peace alive within those walls. Respecting this boundary is not only an act of kindness, but also an acknowledgement of individuality. Because privacy is not a weakness. It is a choice, a strength, and sometimes the greatest form of self-care. So, when he realizes that this is why you don't like having visitors at home, a new level of understanding is born. A respect for your silence, your space, and your peace. And that respect becomes the foundation of a deeper connection, one built not on intrusion, but on trust. The personal space we keep at home is far more than just four walls and a roof. It is an extension of who we are. Every corner, every detail, and every routine inside those walls carries a piece of our identity. It is the place where we feel safe enough to let go of the outside world, where we can breathe without judgment, and where we can exist without performance. And like public spaces, our home is the one environment that truly belongs to us, where the energy is shaped by our choices and our rhythm of life. When someone steps into that space uninvited or without understanding, it can feel like a disruption not just of the house, but of the spirit that dwells within it. Because our personal space is tied directly to our emotional well-being, it affects the way we think, the way we rest, and even the way we interact with the world outside. A peaceful home often creates a peaceful mind, while a disturbed home can silently build stress, anxiety, or discomfort. That's why for many, the act of limiting visitors is not a sign of being distant, but rather an act of protecting the sacred balance of their environment. It's about ensuring that the space continues to provide calmness, clarity, and security. And this connection between the space we keep and the comfort we feel becomes clearer the more we value silence, privacy, and the energy we allow inside our walls. Home is not just a place made of bricks, walls, and furniture. It is a sanctuary where the heart finds rest and the mind finds relief. It is the shelter where we return after carrying the weight of the world, where the noise of society fades, and where our truest self finally feels safe to exist. In the chaos of daily life, every person needs a refuge, a corner that whispers peace, a space that restores strength, and a setting where wounds, both visible and invisible, can heal in silence. Within those walls, routines are not just tasks, but rituals of comfort. The way we place things, the silence we choose, the atmosphere we protect, each detail contributes to the invisible calm that home provides. For some, it is the aroma of familiar meals. For others, it is the softness of the bed, the stillness of the evening, or the quiet hum of thoughts uninterrupted. These moments are not small. They are what allow us to gather the energy to face the world again. And so, the home becomes more than a physical shelter. It becomes a sanctuary of the soul, a place where we are not required to explain, to perform, or to host, but only to be. That is why its value cannot be measured in its size or luxury, but in the depth of comfort it provides, in the way it holds us steady when everything outside feels uncertain. Visitors, no matter how well-meaning, often carry with them energy, expectations, and noise that shift the atmosphere of a home. A knock at the door can feel like a ripple disturbing calm waters, bringing with it conversations, interruptions, and the subtle pressure to engage. What may appear to others as harmless company can, in truth, become a heavy weight for someone who treasures silence and order. It is not the presence of people that is troubling, but the disruption of balance they unintentionally cause. Every visitor arrives with a different mood, a different vibration, and a different demand for attention. Some bring joy, others bring complaints, and some carry with them the unspoken expectation of hospitality. Expectations that quietly press against the peace that home was meant to preserve. Even simple interactions like where they sit, what they touch, or how long they stay can alter the rhythm of the house, leaving behind a residue of energy that takes time to fade. For someone who sees home as a sanctuary, even the smallest disturbance can feel magnified. The laughter that others find comforting might echo too loudly against the walls of someone's quiet world. The endless chatter, the casual moving of objects, or the intrusion into private corners can all feel like cracks forming in a fragile shell of peace. And this is why the presence of visitors is not always welcomed with open arms, not out of rejection, but out of the need to protect the very essence of tranquility that home was created to hold. Not everyone understands the value of solitude and privacy, because the world has conditioned us to believe that connection must always come in the form of constant company. Some measure warmth by the number of gatherings, the noise of laughter in crowded rooms, or the presence of visitors filling the space. But for others, warmth is found in silence, in the comfort of being unseen, and in the ability to breathe without the weight of outside eyes. What is sacred to one can appear strange to another. This difference often creates misunderstanding. A person who loves solitude may be judged as antisocial, distant, or even cold. Their refusal to welcome visitors is sometimes mistaken as rejection, when in truth, it is simply an act of self-protection. They know how deeply their spirit relies on peace, and they guard it fiercely, even if the world does not see why. To them, solitude is not emptiness. It is fullness. It is the place where thoughts grow, creativity blooms, and healing begins. But trying to explain this value to someone who thrives in constant social interaction can feel like speaking a language they do not understand. They see quietness as loneliness, when it is in fact freedom. They see closed doors as barriers, when they are in fact shields preserving what matters most. And it is in this gap of understanding that the conflict lies. One person's joy is another's exhaustion. One person's comfort is another's intrusion. Some people find their energy in crowds, in conversations that never seem to end, and in the constant presence of others around them. For them, companionship is fuel and silence feels heavy, almost unbearable. They thrive when surrounded by voices, by movement, and by interaction. But there are those who walk a different path, those who draw their strength not from the noise of many, but from the stillness of being alone. For them, solitude is not a punishment. It is a source of renewal. In that stillness, they listen more closely to themselves. Their minds untangle, their hearts settle, and their spirit breathes freely. What may seem like isolation to others is in fact a chosen rhythm of life, one where peace is louder than chatter, and reflection carries more weight than small talk. They do not reject connection. They simply value meaningful presence over constant presence. It is this difference between those who crave endless company and those who need quietness That creates a world of misunderstanding. People often assume that silence means sadness, when in truth, it can be the deepest form of happiness. And so, while some open their doors wide to every visitor, others close them not out of bitterness, but because they know their strength is built in the quiet moments that follow after the world has been kept outside. It is never about disrespecting visitors, nor is it about turning away the warmth of human connection. It is about protecting inner calm, the delicate balance that makes a home feel like a sanctuary. Every person carries their own energy, and when they step into someone else's space, they leave traces of that energy behind. Sometimes it is light and uplifting, but other times it can be heavy, restless, or draining. For a person who values peace above all, even a single disruption can linger long after the guest has gone. Protecting that calm is not an act of selfishness, it is an act of survival. Just as the body needs rest to stay strong, the mind needs quiet to stay clear. Without it, thoughts grow tangled, emotions grow restless, and the weight of life feels harder to carry. Visitors, no matter how kind, can unintentionally disturb that balance. They may ask for attention, expect conversation, or even bring with them the burdens of their own lives. And all of it settles into the air of the home. This is why setting boundaries around who enters and when is so important. It is not a rejection of people, but a preservation of peace. A home is not a public space. It is a private world where energy must be chosen carefully. And those who understand this truth know that saying no to constant visitors is not closing a door on others. It is keeping the door open for clarity, stillness, and the kind of rest that the outside world never offers. When people insist on visiting without thought, or when they press themselves into a space uninvited, they often do not realize that they are crossing invisible boundaries. Not all boundaries are drawn with walls or locked doors. Some are drawn in silence, in preference, and in the unspoken need for distance. Yet, because those lines cannot always be seen, they are the easiest to ignore. And when ignored, they can cause a quiet kind of harm, not loud or obvious, but heavy enough to disturb the heart. A person who treasures their privacy may feel forced to put on a smile, to entertain, to host when inside their spirit is longing for quiet. The home, which should be a refuge, suddenly feels like a stage, and the person inside it feels like a performer pressed to act for the comfort of others. This pressure, though unseen, chips away at peace. It is not the visitor's intention to cause discomfort, but intention does not erase the effect. What makes it more delicate is that refusing visitors can be misunderstood. To say no risks being labeled as cold, unfriendly, or distant. And so many suffer quietly, allowing boundaries to be crossed again and again, just to avoid being misunderstood. But deep inside, they know the cost of these intrusions. The quiet fatigue that follows, the mental clutter that builds, the sacred calm that slips away unnoticed. A home is never just walls and furniture. It is a mirror of the person who lives within it. Some homes are vibrant, filled with sound, decoration, and movement, reflecting the spirit of someone who loves life in constant motion. Others are quieter, simpler, sometimes even a little messy, but each detail, whether intentional or not, tells a story about the one who lives there. The way books are arranged, the way light falls into a room, even the way silence rests in the corners. All of it is an expression of personality. When visitors enter, they do not only step into a physical space, they step into this intimate reflection of the self. And not everyone understands the weight of that. Some may comment without care, move things around, or treat the space as if it were theirs to navigate freely. To someone who cherishes their privacy, such actions are not harmless. They feel like small invasions, as though pieces of their inner world are being touched without permission. This is why home, in all its forms, demands respect. It may not shine like the homes of others. It may not be arranged for display, but it holds authenticity. It holds truth. Allowing someone inside is, in many ways, allowing them to see unguarded parts of oneself. And if that person cannot treat it with understanding, the visit becomes more than an inconvenience. It becomes a disruption of identity, a disturbance to the safe rhythm carefully built inside those walls. A life without constant visitors does not equal a life of loneliness. On the contrary, it often reflects a deliberate choice, the decision to share time and space only with those whose presence feels meaningful. Companionship, after all, is not measured by numbers but by depth. One genuine connection can bring more fulfillment than a room filled with shallow conversation. Those who choose fewer visitors understand this truth well. They are not closing themselves off from the world, they are filtering it, letting in only what strengthens rather than drains them. There is a freedom in knowing that solitude is not emptiness but a chosen company with oneself. In those quiet hours, the mind can wander without interruption, creativity can flow without distraction, and the heart can rest without demand. The absence of constant visitors is not an absence of love. It is a presence of clarity. And when company is chosen intentionally, each interaction feels more valuable, more sincere, and more nourishing to the soul. But to those who equate togetherness with validation, this choice often seems puzzling. They mistake the preference for solitude as sadness, when it is in truth an affirmation of self. They may not see that in those closed doors lies a deeper kind of openness, an openness to peace, to self-reflection, and to only the kind of company that aligns with one's spirit. All too often, when someone chooses to limit visitors, it is misunderstood. People may label it as arrogance, pride, or even hostility, when in reality, it is nothing more than self-preservation. The world has a way of expecting constant openness, as though one's worth is measured by how many people they can entertain or how often their doors are open. But the truth is, not every heart can carry the weight of constant interaction. Some hearts are built to protect their energy, to value silence, and to guard the fragile balance that allows them to function in a noisy world. The misjudgment is painful, because what is seen from the outside is rarely what exists on the inside. To the observer, it may look like coldness. To the one living it, it is survival. They know that endless hosting, endless noise, endless intrusion will chip away at their peace, leaving them exhausted, distracted, or even resentful. And so, they choose to draw a line, not to insult anyone, but to remain whole. Yet, this boundary is rarely understood. Instead of being recognized as strength, it is often mistaken as weakness. Instead of being honored as wisdom, it is criticized as pride. This gap between perception and reality creates a loneliness of its own. The loneliness of being misunderstood. And until someone sees beyond the surface, until they recognize that protecting peace is not the same as rejecting people, the one who values solitude is left carrying the weight of unfair judgment. There comes a moment when, after much misunderstanding, someone finally begins to see the truth. They realize that the quietness you protect is not rejection, but refuge. They notice how your peace fades when boundaries are ignored, how the calm you've built is disturbed by constant intrusion. In that moment of clarity, they understand why the door is not always open, why visits are not always welcomed, and why solitude is not a sign of sadness, but of strength. This realization often comes slowly, not in one grand revelation, but in small observations. The way your spirit seems lighter when the home is quiet. The way your energy feels restored after time alone. The way your presence is stronger when you haven't been drained by unnecessary interruption. They begin to see that solitude is not something you hide in, but something you thrive in. They understand that what you are guarding is not distance from people, but closeness with yourself. And with that understanding, something shifts. The criticism softens, the judgment fades, and in its place grows respect. Respect for your boundaries, for your choices, and for the quiet dignity with which you protect your peace. It is in this shift of perspective that a deeper kind of connection can be born. Not one based on force or expectation, but one built on recognition and acceptance. When that realization finally arrives, the way a person treats your space begins to change. They no longer see your boundaries as walls meant to keep them out, but as lines drawn to protect the delicate balance within. Instead of feeling offended when you decline a visit, they begin to understand it as an act of care for yourself, a decision that allows you to stay whole, calm, and present. And with that new awareness, respect grows like a seed that finally finds the right soil. This respect does not always need to be spoken. It shows itself in subtle ways. They might pause before asking to visit. They might consider your comfort before stepping through the door. Or they might even learn to appreciate the beauty of silence alongside you. What once felt like distance now feels like depth. What once seemed like rejection now feels like honesty. And slowly, the relationship between you and them begins to shift. Not through more noise or more visits, but through a quieter kind of understanding. In this shift, something powerful happens. The pressure to explain yourself fades. You no longer feel the weight of justifying your choices, because your choices are finally seen for what they are: necessary, intentional, and rooted in peace. And in that recognition, the connection between you and the other person becomes less about demands and more about harmony, less about intrusion and more about trust. Privacy, when seen with clear eyes, is not a wall built out of fear or bitterness. It is a form of love for the self. It is the quiet acknowledgement that one's peace, one's mind, and one's heart deserve protection. Choosing to guard your space does not mean you care less for others. It means you are wise enough to care for yourself first. In a world that constantly demands openness, availability, and endless giving, setting boundaries around your home is an act of courage. It is saying, I will not lose myself to satisfy the noise of the world. This form of self-love is subtle but powerful. It is found in the decision to close the door when you need silence, in the courage to say no when others expect yes, and in the strength to honor your own needs even when misunderstood. It is not an easy path, because people often mistake privacy for rejection. Yet those who have walked through loneliness and returned to themselves know that protecting peace is not a withdrawal from life. It is a deeper way of living it. When privacy is honored, the soul begins to flourish. Thoughts become clearer, emotions settle more gently, and energy is spent more wisely. In that silence, one learns not only to hear the world less, but to hear themselves more. And this is why privacy is not the absence of love. It is love in its purest form. Love turned inward so that it may one day be shared outward in healthier, truer ways. Protecting your peace at home is not an act of selfishness. It is a necessity for emotional balance. Just as the body requires sleep to restore its strength, the mind requires stillness to preserve its clarity. A home without peace is like a heart without rhythm. It cannot beat with steadiness, it cannot carry life with ease. That is why the act of limiting visitors, of setting boundaries, of choosing silence over constant activity, is not a refusal to live. It is the very thing that makes living sustainable. When peace is guarded, the home becomes more than shelter. It becomes a sanctuary where the soul can return to itself. It becomes the place where burdens are set down, where wounds quietly mend, and where strength gathers in silence. Without this, a person begins to unravel. The noise of the world creeps into every corner, the spirit feels restless, and the very walls that should protect begin to suffocate. Guarding peace, then, is not optional. It is vital. And though outsiders may not always see this truth, though they may label it as distance or even coldness, Those who live it know that peace is the foundation upon which all else stands. For without it, even joy feels fragile, even love feels heavy, even life itself feels unsteady. Protecting peace is protecting the self, and protecting the self is what allows one to show up fully in the world beyond those doors. And so, when he finally realizes why you do not like having visitors at home, it changes everything. What once seemed like distance now looks like wisdom. What once felt like rejection now reveals itself as preservation. He understands that your home is not closed to him. It is simply open to peace. The truth is, not every door needs to be open to everyone. Sometimes, the greatest act of love, for yourself and for others, is knowing when to keep that door closed. Because within those walls lives the calm that sustains you, the silence that strengthens you, and the balance that allows you to give the best of yourself to the world outside. So let the world think what it may. Those who truly see you will understand. Protecting your peace is not a weakness nor a flaw. It is your greatest strength.